Hello and welcome to episode number 100 of the Board Game Barrage podcast, a podcast about board games, latest hotness, and how to have fun with your friends even when you're losing. I am Neelan. I am joined by my co-hosts, as always, Mark and Kellen. How are you guys doing?
I'm feeling big. I'm feeling triple digit big. 100.
Never thought we would make it this far.
Never thought. Never thought we'd make it to 2 digits. I was ready to leave at number 6.
It was all a grand ruse.
Wait, what have we rused people into doing?
Well, it was like
A lot of things.
I needed some friends to play board games with me, so I said, let's make a podcast.
That's right.
Maybe
So-
next year then.
I mean, we've made it. You know what I mean? Like, I thought a month in we were done for.
Yeah.
And then when you guys said, Kellen, let's record it at Neelan's instead of your house with the loud refrigerator in the background, I was thinking this is the first step to them cutting me out of the podcast. Pretty soon I'm not going to get invited anymore, so I'm just not sure how we've made it here. Episode 100 is a huge deal for us, but we are working behind the scenes on our 2-year anniversary spectacular. Mark? Say spectacular.
Spectacular.
Yeah, like that. And there are some changes and new fun stuff as we look into 2020, but, you know,
New faces will appear. Old faces will disappear.
we needed to get through the Christmas season.
So this episode is episode number 100. So for our number 50 episode, we did our top 50 games. So this episode needs to be twice as good. We're going to do our top 50 games for the second time.
When you said twice as good, I thought you were going to say we're going to do 100 games, and I do not have 100 games ready.
I have 100 games. You guys didn't do that? Okay, we'll just keep it to the top 50.
There are not 100 good games in the world.
That exists.
Hot take
Wow.
to start off the show.
Before we get into that, I imagine that a lot of people are going to hear this and have a lot of things to say about our choices. So if you disagree or you agree with anything we have on our lists, please join our discussion at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord. If you don't know what Discord is, it's just glorified chat. You can do it on your computer. You can do it on your phone. It's a great way just to hang out and talk board games with us and other great people in the Board Game Barrage community.
Yeah, speaking of the Discord, this has been an especially great week for the Discord because a bunch of our listeners have been meeting up to play games and hang out at PAX.
Yeah, it's like an informal meet that just happened all without us. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
and watching them like plan their days out over the Discord and take group shots at the table has been awesome. So that's been really, really wonderful to see.
You can find that on our site at boardgamebarrage.com. You can also get a link to our guild on Board Game Geek if you'd prefer to talk to us in a sort of forums capacity. That's boardgamebarrage.com/guild. So this episode is going to be the first 10 games on all of our list. That is numbers 50 to 41. So these are all fantastic games, but not as
Well,
fantastic as the
Speak
ones
for yourself.
Well,
all mine are fantastic.
oh, who can say?
Let's start with how we made these lists. These
Yeah.
are the top 50 games of all time.
Yeah.
So that's objective. That's the start.
Yeah.
But how did you choose the games that you chose?
So the way I did it was I used the Pub Meeple website, which allows you to come up with your top whatever list by ranking everything that you want in pairs. So they basically show you a pair of games to say which one you like better. You select it, and you'll keep going through your list until you have, unbeknownst to yourself, made your top X list.
And so Pub Meeple just has you rank one thing against one thing,
Right.
and then you do that a bunch of times, and then that sorts it into a list.
Exactly.
So when Pub Meeple showed you Tic-Tac-Toe
Right.
on one side and City of the Big Shoulders on the other side,
Yeah.
did you say to yourself, Mark, which one would I rather play?
Right.
Or did you say, which one is a better designed
So
game?
that's a good question. The way I did it was I thought to myself, if I got a call right now for a game of this in the ideal circumstances, which one would I play? So it's hard to compare games like Feast for Odin to For Sale because they're so different in terms of number of players and how quickly they go and things like that. But I thought to myself, if I got a call from Neelan and Kellen saying, hey, we've got just the right amount of players and just around the right amount of time for either For Sale or Feast for Odin, which one would I rather play? So I took it as an ideal circumstance thing. And there's also other things mixed in. Like, ideally, for me, this is as objective a list as I could make it. I want it to be like my top 50 games. But you can't help but feel like some games you've played out, even though you acknowledge they're great games, but I may just be sick of it. That's a natural way for a game to like degrade off my list. My fundamental principle was ideal circumstances. I got a call right now. Which one am I going to play?
My method was a little bit of Pub Meeple and then a little bit of just sort of point-wise comparing it to my list from last year in a way that sort of made logical sense to me, because I didn't want like massive reshufflings of things, but I was very conscious about certain games that you'll see moved down my list as it progresses. And the biggest contributor to this was either games that I've played a lot recently and I'm not feeling that excited about anymore, or games that I haven't played in a very, very long time and don't feel like I want to play. It kind of feels like they have a little bit of a nostalgia weight to them, which is why some of them might still be on my list, but I sort of de-incentivize putting them up higher in my list as a result of that. So yeah, that was my main thing. It's going to feel logically sound compared to last year's list, but there's a little bit of shuffling in the middle.
What about you, Colin?
For me, it was a bit more in the culling mindset. I've been getting rid of a lot of games recently, and so my list of games truly is, if I could only have 50 games, these would be them. And then if I had to start getting rid of games, I would get rid of them in order of 50 downwards to 1. So that means I think the strength of that type of list in my mind is that there are very small party-ish games that are really simple filler games that are on my list that, in your words, Mark, if I got the call from you two, there might be 50 dudes on a map games that I would want to play in the ideal circumstances. But no one needs 50 dudes on a map game, and I don't even need 50 dudes on a map game. I think an easy example to illustrate this is that Cthulhu Wars is one of my favorite games. Glorantha the Gods War is 75% the same game. I think Glorantha would be in my top 50 games of all time if Cthulhu Wars did not exist. But because Cthulhu Wars exists, I can't put both on the list for me.
I get that.
Okay, let's get right into it.
We need like a pistol, like a starter pistol.
I'll add that sound effect.
Like off to the races,
Yeah.
Like with the horses and the cheering.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
I like that.
How do they say it for horses?
Horses, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if they do.
Kellen, what do they do for horses?
At a horse race?
Yeah.
Well, first you dress up in really fancy clothes.
And a hat.
And then you find really small people to ride the horses.
Yeah.
Because they can't be normal size.
Right, it's hard for the horses.
It hurts the horses.
Hurts the horses.
And then you have to go to Kentucky.
Yeah.
Okay.
Derby.
For a derby. And then they say on your engine, on your mark.
God, here it comes.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Wait, no, I'm not going to go. Wait, where do you think I'm going?
Never mind. I thought there was a Kentucky Fried Chicken thing coming up here.
Oh, man, there should have been. Damn it.
We are only tangentially sponsored by Kentucky Fried Chicken.
How does the tangential sponsorship work?
They don't know about it.
No, because it's like, when sometimes they use the word like fueled by,
right.
So like fueled by Gatorade,
Right.
Like our podcast is fueled by
Spiced
KFC.
by KFC, yeah.
Spiced by the Colonel.
Let's get right into our list of games with my number 50 game of all time. The 50th best game of all time is a roll and write game. It's actually the only roll and write game on my list, but I thought I had to have at least one on here, so I chose the best one. This is a new entry for the list and a new game for 2019. It is Twice as Clever. This is a fantastic, puzzly roll and write game where the mechanic that's quite neat is you roll all the dice, they're all of different colors. When you pick a die, you then lose access to the dice that are lower than that value for the round. So there are tough choices to be made where you pick a high value die. Each color corresponds to a section of your score sheet with a different little mini game. You might be trying to get just flat numbers. You might just trying to get the dice to be in a specific order. You might be trying to fill out a grid, and finding the right time to fill out each section of your grid is crucial to doing well at Twice as Clever. This is a game I've not only played a bunch of times multiplayer, it also has a fantastic solo app, which I would recommend, and I've just been doing that endlessly. It's really, really, really good.
One of the prerequisites for games on my list is that there are other people who will enjoy them with you.
Games with a solo mode are like knocked down.
Well, they're not games.
Okay, fair enough. That is Twice as Clever.
The 50th best game of all time is new to my list this year and is a hidden gem among the Oink Games collection. If you know anything about me, you know that I like Oink Games. The 50th best board game of all time is called Mask Men by Oink Games. This is a very unique trick-taking game where luchadors are going into the ring and fighting each other, but you don't know which suit of luchador is stronger than other suits of luchadors, and it's It happens as they come out. So you find out a luchador is better or worse than other luchadors while they fight in the ring. It's an insanely silly theme. It's a very odd game to wrap your head around, but for such a small box, for such a simple set of rules, you are thinking about things in a way that is just unlike any other game. It's charming. It's cute. Everyone I've introduced it to has had a great time. I really, really like Maskmen, and I'm excited to continue playing it.
Yeah, I remember playing this at Gen Con and really liking it and thinking that was a very clever system, like central system to a trick-taking game.
Yeah, it's unusual. Like trying to figure out what the strong suits are going to be while the game is playing is just such a novel idea. And then you have these little masks that you sort of mapping out the tier ranks of all of them as you're going. It's pretty cute.
Yeah, one of the foundations of my list is just experiences that I don't feel like you can get anywhere else with the most minimal rule set to deliver that, and I think Maskmen is a quintessential fit in that respect. Maskmen. My number 50. Maskmen. Mark wants to start his, but if I just keep saying Maskmen by Oink
We're
Game.
losing listeners by this second.
Maskmen. Maskmen.
My number 50 game.
Maskmen.
My number 50 game.
Maskmen. Maskmen. Maskmen.
Congratulations on your
Maskmen.
100th episode, ladies and gentlemen.
Maskmen.
My number 50 game of all time dropped 19 places, but I still love it, even though I always feel like I won't like it as much as I do. This is Codenames. Codenames is a game where whenever it's suggested, I always sort of frown upon it because I've played it so many times and I always feel like I'll be sick of it. I'm never the one suggesting it, but when it gets to the table, I always love it. It's another game that always hits with people who are new to the hobby. Whenever I play it with folks who are unaccustomed to playing board games, they all love it. I've had a number of friends buy Codenames while sitting at the table playing it for the first time who don't normally buy board games in general. It's just such a clever game. I'm sure most people who are listening to this podcast are familiar with it. It's a team word game, sort of like it's been likened to Password meets Battleship, which I think is an apt description. It's just an evergreen game. Feels like a life Monopoly sort of. Will be in many non-gaming households over the years.
My hot take is that this one falls down your list from just playing it so often and so much.
Yeah.
So the framework of would I rather play this or chomp at the bit to play something else? But in terms of like lifetime plays and games that you will keep forever, my guess is this is much closer to like even top 10,
Absolutely.
frankly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, exactly. So that is Codenames number 50.
Brilliant game. My number 49 is another new entry for the list and another 2019 game. There are not that many on the list, so we've seen two of them already. This is Air, Land, and Sea. This is a two-player card battling game with only... Ooh, that was a weird thing. This is a two-player card battling game with only 18 cards. So you're going to play these cards...
Sorry, I have to stop you.
Yeah.
Because that's got to be the epitaph for your grave.
Wait, what?
Excuse me?
That was a weird thing.
That was a weird thing.
Neil and Niker.
I like it. I actually kind of like that. That's great. Air, Land, and Sea. Air, Land, and Sea is an 18-card game where you...
Wait, I got to stop you because you know what? If he outlasts you, he's going to call back to this and he's going to insist that's
what I wanted on my grave.
Right.
I have the evidence right here.
I would say that
Maybe don't.
don't
have
formally
the audio.
endorse it.
Yeah, okay.
I'll cut that out for your benefit.
Because,
If I am dead, Kellen did it.
well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Is like, I like seeing jokes through, Neelan. I like getting to the end of them, delivering.
So Air, Land, and Sea is a game, a two-player game where you have three distinct battle zones, air, land, and sea, and 18 cards, 6 cards in each color corresponding to the 3 different battle zones. You play a card that card's the strength between 1 and 6. The other player has a card, but each of these cards has cool effects like flip down the other player's card or move their card to another battle zone or lock down this battle zone so it can't be played to anymore. So it is a game with sort of trying to find the right timing to play big cards or cards with interesting effects in order to dominate 2 of the battlefields. If you do that, you win the round and you get a certain number of points depending on how late in the round it is. Because one of the other things you can do in Air, Land, and Sea is tactically retreat from a game of it. Depending on how many cards you play, that gives the other player less points, and you keep playing rounds until one of the players has 12 points. And as you get into the third or fourth round of a game of Air, Land, and Sea, those tactical retreats start to feel very inviting and very, very interesting decisions to make. So it's a game with decisions upon decisions, both in a single round and in the meta game of it.
I've yet to play this game. I'm super eager to play it. I love that idea of the tactical retreat. It seems like such a smart addition to a game like this.
It's funny because if I had played this game one or two less times than I have in 2019, I have a feeling it might have eked itself onto the list. But now I like it a lot, but I just don't feel the urge or sort of what Mark has described as that just I want to play it more now urge for this two-player dueler. And there are so many of these two-player type games. So for me, I'm kind of over it already, but I don't, that isn't to say it's not great.
No, that's interesting because like my experience has been the opposite, and this has become like a de facto lunchtime game with me that I sort of play with one of three different people at work on the regular. So it is quite accessible. Not all of these people are regular board gamers, and they all seem to get into it because it's a very easy game to explain, and everyone seems to get it very quickly. That is Air, Land, and Sea, my number 49 game.
My number 49th best game of all time is also a new addition to the list. I think this was a accidental oversight last year. This game reminds me of all the games that you played growing up with your family, with a deck of cards and the hearts and the spades in the rook category, but it just has a little bit more fun factor to it. This is Wizard, my number 49th best game of all time. Wizard is a trick-taking game. Wow, that's 2 trick-taking games in a row. Interesting. Where you have some special powers. You are bidding on the amount of tricks that you think you can win each round, and you can never have a bid where it matches up perfectly. So if there are 4 tricks to take, I can't bid 2, Nealon and Mark, and then bid 1. The last player must bid in a way that will upset someone. And this is the perfect quintessential game to pass time while you're having discussions, while you're having fun, talking and just passing time together while playing a game that still has things going on in it. There are more gamery versions of this, like Skull King, that I know many board game media love. I don't think it needs it. I think it's perfected in Wizard. This is one that I have a Pokemon retheme of that I adore and will always keep in my collection, and there's a place for a game like Wizard.
Like you said, this is a classic. I've played it as Oh Hell, which I think is a similar version of the game, but we also played your Pokemon retheme, which was really fun.
That was actually the first time I'd played it, was your Pokemon retheme, and I loved it. It's very clever.
It opened my eyes to so many Pokemon.
You were just making, like, what? You kept asking me questions about different cards.
Oh, I didn't know any of the guys on there.
You're like, the hell
What's
is
a
this?
Pikachu? Boom. That's a shot.
That is Wizard, my 49th favorite game of all time.
My number 49 game is new to the list. This is a game that I played a couple years back, but after acquiring the card game version of it, I broke out this original big box version and realized that I missed playing it. This is Carson City. Carson City falls under one of 2 main categories of games that I find myself gravitating towards, I think, which is like the old, generally forgotten, mean Euro type game. Carson City is a worker placement game with a lot of aggression. There's an aspect where you can fight over a worker placement spot, and there's a lot of crowding your opponents out of positions. There's a area control aspect to it where you have a map that goes along with the worker placement spots. There's variable powers. Each round you draft a townsfolk, and that grants you powers for the round. So there's a lot of stuff going on, but it's just a really tight, mean Euro with just a very mean worker placement aspect to it, which I really, really like. So my number 49 game of all time is Carson City. Have you guys played Carson City?
No, still not.
I think we should play this.
I really want to.
Yeah.
My number 48 game of all time is Innovation. This is a great...
Excuse me?
Innovation is slightly better than Twice as Clever. What? Makes sense to me.
Number 48 game, best game of all time, Innovation. You okay with that?
Nope.
I don't think you should be so glib, Mark.
What?
This beat out Biblios, pushing Biblios off my list. So,
all right, I'm gonna steal Callan's leave the room bit right now.
So Innovation is a 2-player well, not a two-player game strictly, but I think it's best at 2 players, is a card game by Carl Chudyk, he of the multi-use cards, where you are creating these very intricate tableaus where you're tucking cards and other cards by getting stronger and stronger cards that progress through the ages of civilization, effectively. So the cards are getting insanely powerful towards the end of the game, depending how far down the ages you go. And you're getting these very crazy combos where the best thing about them is just the ability to bash your opponent over the head with them over and over and over again. It's a very satisfying game where you find these cards that work effectively together, and there are multiple win conditions, which you always have to be on the lookout for. That is Innovation, my number 48th best game of all time.
Just know that on every game that you say subsequent to this, I'm going to look you in the eyes and say, are you sure that's better than Innovation? And when you get to something dumb, I will not let it go. I will not.
I look forward to it.
Let it go. My number 48 best game of all time is Ingenious. Ingenious is a Reiner Knizia classic. It is described very often as a Scrabble game, but with shapes instead of words. So if you're bad at words, but like some of the play of Scrabble, Ingenious may be well worth looking into. You have sort of a hexagonal dominoes. I don't know if that's exactly what they are, but it's close, and you are matching shapes on the board to score points and combo together. My favorite way to play this is the Team 2v2 version. I'm bringing it home for Christmas. I'm going to be playing it with my mom. I'm very excited about that. Ingenious is great.
I like Ingenious.
Yeah, I remember liking it too, and I'm not usually one for abstracts.
My number 48 game dropped 5 spots from last year. This falls under the other sort of general type of game that I enjoy, which is a small card game with very difficult decisions. This is Wyatt Earp, which is part of the Mystery Rummy series. Wyatt Earp is a rummy game where the tough decisions in Wyatt Earp come from the fact that every turn you have to play a card and pick up a card, and when you are playing a card, you're playing into a common pool that your opponents can draw from. So it's sort of rummy with this sharing card aspect to it. And there's further, your scoring is based on the number of cards you've played to your play area of a suit, but it also is dependent on the number of cards your opponents have played to that suit. So if Nealon plays 3, say, green cards down, I now can look at my hand and see if I want to play green cards myself, because a certain number of cards are required to even score at the end of the round. So am I going to help him get to that scoring criteria and maybe give him points, but maybe it's worth it for me to play something because I'll be scoring points as well. It's just every turn of the game, there's that, what card am I going to play and what card am I going to give up to these guys to potentially take from me. It's got a little bit of a take that element. Some of the cards have take that aspects to it, which I generally don't like in games, but works with Wyatt Earp, with how sort of mean it is, and sort of works with the Old West theme to it, because every time a take that card comes up, you draw another card from the deck, and if it has a bullet hole, you've won the duel. So there's a little bit of a thematic way to deal with that randomness. But yeah, Wyatt Earp, tight, small card game. Really enjoy it. That's my number 48 game.
I enjoyed playing Wyatt Earp with you, but there's this little bit of like, you couldn't design a theme that I cared about less.
The Old West, yeah.
Yeah, but then you also have like this mild like appreciation or like fascination for it. Something about like you like describing the theme to us and like going through some of the mechanisms do ladder up to that theme in a fun and interesting way. I'm kind of like related to someone who likes the theme of Wyatt Earp, and that makes me like it more than I should. Like I'm looking at pictures of this homeboy right now on Google Images, and I'm just like, no, I'm not into it.
To that point, like there is a randomness element to it, and the way that they address it is this like draw a card from the deck, which makes the game tighter, first of all. So like using a card from this fairly small deck of cards, like I like the fact that randomness is dealt with this stack of cards, making the game even tighter because you're burning a turn basically, and for it to be like a gunshot, just an interesting way to deal with randomness as opposed to a die or something like that. So 48, Wyatt Earp.
My number 47 best game of all time is The Oracle of Delphi. This is one of 2 Stefan Feld games on my list. They both fell a couple of places. We'll get back to that when we come to the second one. Oracle of Delphi is a game I haven't played in a while, but it is a medium-heavy Euro race game, which is unusual. It's neat in that at the start of the game, you can go off in multiple directions. You have multiple objectives you need to fill and then get back to the beginning, and you're getting powers along the way. Each of the little objectives is a little mini sort of type of game that you sort of have to try be able to fulfill in order to be able to collect it. So it has a lot of people going in different directions because everyone is trying to pursue different things. There is some competition over certain spots, and then you just race back to the start using the powers that you've accrued. That is the Oracle of Delphi.
I really like this. This is unusual for a FEL. Doesn't have the pointilliness to it. Yeah,
I think that might be why I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for being a true Euro game, it disguises itself quite well and has some interesting choices to make, which is always what you're looking for. My number 47, best game of all time, is new to the list, and this replaces Mysterium, which has been kicked off of the list. And Mysterium had replaced Dixit last year off of my own personal list, so we're looking at cool cards with crazy art on them. This is Detective Club. This just distills it down. I mean, I'm not one for cooperative games to begin with, so Mysterium was always kind of a weird fit and a nostalgia pick for me playing games with my sister. But in Detective Club, one player at the table does not know the word that you are trying to articulate. And so that word could be swimming, could be something abstract like beautiful. And then everyone will be playing cards in front of them using the Dixit-style cards that have beautiful abstract art on them, and then they have to defend themselves. So this is what I love about the game, is you have that fun round of decision-making where you're trying to choose which card it represents, but then you sort of are in front of the courtroom having to defend your decisions. This has some similar elements to other cool games like Deception Murder in Hong Kong, where everyone is listening to why you chose the things that you chose, and one person is lying. This makes for some really tense rounds, and it also makes for some hilarious rounds where everyone knows as soon as you put down your first card, everyone knows that you're the bad guy, but you still have to try to defend yourself, and it just devolves into hilariousness. That is Detective Club. No one likes Detective Club?
I like it. I think it was in consideration for my list, that's for sure. But
I like it okay. It still hasn't sunk its hooks into me just yet.
Do you have like Dixit on your list?
I do not. I like Dixit though. For some reason, like Detective Club, Spyfall, which I know it's not like super a lot, but all those games just sort of feel like around the same area.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, I do think it's interesting that the more of them that come out, I think it cheapens the original in some way. Like there's this interesting novel idea behind Spyfall, and then now we have 17 versions of it, and some of them are better than Spyfall, but then the sum of all of them together pushes them all down.
Yeah, right. I agree. It sort of like weakens the strength.
Because I almost don't want to have Detective Club on my list, even though it does fulfill like the slot in a way that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I get
but
that.
it's like a weird mental thing.
I get it. My number 47 game of all time is new to the list and new to the world because it came out in 2019. This is City of the Big Shoulders. Shout out to listener Nate for this one because he's the first person to clue me in on it. I remember him talking about it back when it was first coming up on Kickstarter as a game he thought I might like, and he was right. City of the Big Shoulders is an 18xx Euro hybrid, sort of leaning a little bit to the Euro side of things, but I enjoyed it quite a bit. It abstracts the map element of 18xx games and replaces it with this Euro building using aspect that I thought was handled well, and the other stuff that it abstracts from 18xx I think are done really well. I love the fact that, as a sucker for historical themed games, I like the fact that it models itself so closely to Chicago, I think 1875 Chicago, with historically accurate companies, and there are so many companies to choose from, and they're all sort of different, which is its take on the different railroad companies. But whereas the railroad games generally don't give you player powers, this does. So it's a nice, fresh take on 18xx that I think is done quite well. I'm very eager to play it again. I know we all played it for the first time together, so I'd be interested to see what you guys think of it in retrospect. But yeah, I'm very happy with and excited to play again my number 47 game, City of the Big Shoulders.
yeah, it didn't make my list, but it's one of the games I'm most excited to play in 2020. I remember liking my play of it a lot, and I've just been thinking about it a lot since then. It's a very interesting game and my first foray into the 18xx style.
I love it too, and almost put it here in this 50 to 40 category. I think I'm convinced that there's another stock market-esque game that gets rid of more elements that I would prefer over all of them. I don't know what that game is. I haven't found it yet, but the interesting things that I like about it is that stock companies. But it does have some gravitas to it. It's not like not like Biblios. No, but it's not.
Oh, really?
It's not a shot. Like in Biblios.
Well, it is a shot.
Well, Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a shot. But in Biblios, you are moving the value
I see.
of suits up and down. And like, I'm just like going gaga over how much like I love that.
Right.
But in Biblios, it doesn't feel like there's a weight, as much of a
Right.
weight to it.
I
City
get
of Big Shoulders, if your company is like tanking, like that's a shot right at you.
Yeah, it feels like you're asking for a more pure 18XX in that case.
But they're so.
We'll give it a shot.
Yeah, we gotta give it a shot.
1889, yeah.
You were going to Japan.
That's right.
How could I hate it?
Exactly.
My number 46 best game of all time is Anomia, a game that I think is criminally underrated on BGG. It is a party game where everyone has a stack of cards. You're going to be revealing them in a circle as you go around. And whenever two cards match their symbols, then each of the matching players has to be the first to call out a word that matches to the other player's category. So it's a game of revealing a card, looking around the table for matches, and being the first one to shout out a word that matches a specific category on the other side of the table. And it just leads to a lot of people going, it's that. Like people struggling over their words in order to get out the word that they need to in order to claim the point. And better than that, as you take the card, it might reveal another match around the table. So these matches just start chaining as the game progresses. It's a really cool game. It's pretty stressful, but super easy to teach and a really fun party game.
I think this one is just too stressful for me because having to come up with words on the spot that relate to the category while everyone is like in that tense moment, I just freeze up. And so even real-time games, this is about as stressful as a real-time game gets.
Sure, yeah.
And for me, I just don't like going, like Neelan does. But I mean, I guess, I don't know, Neelan, that sounds like a party.
That's a party to me.
That's
I
a
love
Neelan
Anomia.
party.
Big fan of it myself.
My number 46 best game of all time is new to the list this year and is the current project that I'm working on right now, creating a new version of. This is Cursed Court. This is, I think, a very underrated game. This is a game of bluffing and a game of roulette. So everyone has shared information between them. Everyone knows which cards are going to be included in the scoring. So there's one card placed between each player. And then you make a series of bets on the board. So you make bets on which combinations of cards are going to be in the game by the end of the round. So Mark may make a small bet on something that he has no idea if that card is in the game. And then Neelan banks upon that information and doubles down on that bet. And then I'm on the other side of the table and I just assume that information is solid. And then I make the big boy bet and I come in with all my chips and the two of them just got me and I had no idea it was happening. It's a very interesting type of deduction because you can look at the board and kind of make broad inferences about what's happening. It's like all of the bets are in the bottom left corner of the board. So that's probably what's happening. That's probably what the cards are. And having to do just that little amount, it's just the right amount of deduction for me in this fun, feisty, vibrant game. I'm very much loving Cursed Court and excited to get my Pokemon. But if every game becomes a Pokemon version, I mean, that would
games are Pokemon versions.
Right. And that would improve every game. Like, I don't think there's a game, this is like butter for food.
Right.
There's nothing that Pokemon can't improve.
Right. I will say that I love the move in Cursed Court where you decide to bluff. You're putting yourself out there just enough to make it feel risky. You have that feeling because not only are you playing some of your valuable chips on something that may not turn up, but sometimes you're playing your chips on a spot that you know is bad. And the only way that bet works out is if somebody at the table bites that hook.
Yeah, believes you.
Yeah. So if nobody believes you, you just really hurt yourself. But if somebody believes you, then you've got them. But not only do you have them coming and taking your spot now is sort of like infected the rest of the group. And now
like
everybody
snowballs
thinks,
everything else.
like, why are they both going for it? And that's just such a great moment.
It's such a small thing because if you bet 2 chips, it's like immediately I'll piss off, Mark.
Yeah,
like we know you're lying. But
Yeah.
then if you bet 6,
Right.
it's like, ooh, he's either seriously taking a risk here or that's a real bet. And it's like, at what level do you make that bet?
Yeah.
And it's a mind game between everyone.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So I love Cursed Court, and this was very, very close to being on my list. It's like in the low 50s is where it sort of landed.
Well, once Pokemon arrive,
Yeah, that will be enough
these
to
are all,
elevate it.
every card is holographic in Cursed Court Pokemon Edition. Every card.
Okay. I'm not really sure what that's supposed to mean, but
Holographic.
I'll leave that for the younger generation. My number 46 game dropped 17 spots. This is Kemet. Kemet is a dudes on a map game with a cool series of tech trees. The thing I like about Kemet probably the most is how close everybody is to everybody. So it's not a game where you can sit back and regroup and sort of turtle up. You are forced to get into combat. In fact, you score victory points by initiating and winning combats. I love games that encourage confrontation from the get-go and don't really leave you a place to hide. I think there is a bit of information load in terms of knowing the tech trees and knowing what's available, but that is mitigated by how cool I think the tech trees are. You know, you can get powers, you can get ways to score, but you can also like literally pick up monsters, which are like these cool miniatures that now join your army. It's also got an ancient mythological Egyptian theme, so that's like a home court advantage for me. So yeah, I'm just a big fan of Kemet and how aggressive it is. That's my number 46 game of all time, Kemet.
It's a very, very good game.
I want to play it again with the new revised rules that have come out.
Yeah.
Something about the tech tree always left me feeling a little cold. There's a lot to get through with the tech trees.
Fair.
But for something that's so combat forward and to be so beloved, I think there was something that I missed there, and I think my 2 plays of it.
Yeah, we should do that. That would be great. And I think it plays well at 3, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it does.
My number 45 game, best game of all time, is the second and only other Feld game on my list. It is In the Year of the Dragon. This is another game that is not a very point salad-y sort of game.
Yeah, you have 2 Feld games.
Yeah,
both not Feldy.
Let that be a message, Mr. Feld. In the Year of the Dragon...
Are you telling me how
to design these games? So In the Year of the Dragon is a harsh game where a lot of people are just dying in your palace all of the time, and it is a game about stopping that from happening. There are events that come up, and you have to have achieved certain either resources or certain sort of collections by the point time those events come up, or people in your palace die. It has a very cool turn order system. It is both harsh and can be quite punishing if you sort of sneak out a spot that someone else needs critically at a certain point in time. It can just be hard to come back from. It's a game that I want to play more of. The only reason it slipped down the list is just to make room for other games. It's a great game.
Yeah, I mean, it is brutal. This is like Brutality, the Euro game. My one biggest recollection of this game is in the rules explanation when we were being taught by Dean. He kept saying, when you do this, your people will die. When you do this, your people will die.
Yeah.
It's like a refrain.
Exactly. It's like a non-stop sort of just... Yeah.
It's going to happen. Yeah.
Exactly. It will happen. You will not be able to prevent all of it.
Here's the famine tile. Your people will die. Yeah.
That is In the Year of the Dragon, my number 45 best game.
The 45th best game of all time is not In the Year of the Dragon. It is The Game.
Which one?
It's a game. The Game. Okay, we've made this joke.
Yeah.
I don't think we can keep reusing.
Definitely keep
well,
doing
the
it.
thing is like, I don't know what people are doing. We've reused the same jokes for 100 episodes now.
I'll tell you what people are doing. They're laughing.
That's fair. The Game is related to The Mind, perhaps the more popular version of this game. It is a group co-op game where you're trying to play cards either going ascending or descending into different piles. You have a hand of cards, but you cannot communicate with others about specific elements in your hand, because if you could talk, there would not be a game to the game. So the game is about trying to heuristically look at what other people are playing and what they're doing to figure out where you should play and what you should place, because there are multiple piles that you can play your cards to. The game fits perfectly into this 30-minute group activity where there are stakes, and when someone plays a card, there's a groan or a sigh coming from someone next to you because you've ruined the card that they were about to play, but they couldn't communicate that to you, all while being light enough that it isn't, you didn't knock down the Manara 50 minutes into the co-op game, so to speak.
I remember when this game sort of, I thought, burst on the scene was when it was nominated for the Spiel and nobody had heard of it. And then you look at it and it's called like The Game, and it's got this like ridiculous, at least the first version had ridiculous like macabre artwork with these like skulls, and you're like, what is going on here? But it's been great. This is another game where I introduce it to non-gamers and they love it.
Yeah, I think the new version with art from Kwanchai Moria does definitely help. It's bright and colorful, just a delightful small box card game, which is something that I am way, way into.
Well, the number 45 game of all time isn't in the Year of the Dragon.
We're just going to keep doing this.
And that's right. That's right. Wait till we get to number 1. And it isn't the game, but it is a game. It is my game. And that game is Panic on Wall Street, or as my copy is, Masters of Commerce, which is not as exciting a title. The reason this is on my list and new to my list is thanks to our lovely listeners playing it at Shucks. We put the Gen Con. We're travelers.
Grandpa?
We're world travelers.
World
I go
travel.
all over the place playing games. So yes, we played this with listeners at Shucks, and it was awesome. I had such a great time. The one problem I think with this game is problem and plus is that it excels with quite a few players. It plays up to 11. I think 8 or 10, 6, 8, 10 is probably the sweet spot, probably 8. So it's hard to get a game together, but it's a game of buying and selling and trading and trying to beat your competitors while not necessarily competing with everybody at the table. You're just competing with your fellow either investors or managers. I just love the shouty nature of it. Pit was a game that missed my list, and it's just because I love that real-time shouting, laughing, opportunity to trash talk your opponents that I think works really well in this, my number 45 game, Panic on Wall Street / Masters of Commerce.
Yeah, the two investors versus bankers, two separate games sort of happening simultaneously is just so clever because it's a game that can then play up to like 8 or 10 people even.
11, I think.
Oh, wow, yeah. And while not being completely ridiculous
Right.
because it's divided into these two halves effectively.
Yeah.
It's really clever. Panic on Wall Street is great. My number 44 best game of all time.
You didn't do it the way we were doing it.
Well, this is the first number 44.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I guess we have to
thought we were just gonna
reset.
chain it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Everything.
Yeah, okay.
Up.
But
You
yeah,
have
my
to
number
say everything
44
above
game
it.
is not twice as
Give me like a
clever,
memory game.
Or, oh my God, two bad trick-taking games, a weird Chicago-themed 18XX game, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It is Dead of Winter: The Long Night. This has fallen down a bunch of spots, not only because of games coming above it, but it's a game I just don't feel like I have the enthusiasm to play anymore. Dead of Winter is, by its nature, as a semi-co-op traitor game, quite a fragile experience, and I've had recent games of it where it just didn't really work. It's also a game that has an awkward player count problem in that at 4 or 5 players, it's just too long. And at 3 players, it just doesn't feel substantive enough. So I just don't know where it fits. Semi-co-op is a genre that I want to be very good. And there's only one other game on my list that I think does it necessarily well coming up later. Dead of Winter: The Long Night is always more in promise than in execution to me.
Yeah, I agree. It always feels too long. And you saying that it's perhaps best with 3 just strikes me as such a weird count to play
Right,
that.
for
But
that
yeah,
sort
for the
of a
reason you did.
socially
Yeah.
game. Yeah, exactly. That is Dead of Winter: The Long Night.
Innovation is worse than this game, but you just said that this game only works in theory and not in execution. So, whatever. I mean, I guess, yeah, Neelan, you do you. My phrase there. The number 44 best game of all time that is certainly better than Dead of Winter: The Long Night is actually the biggest loser on my whole list. So this game previously was ranked number 18 and has fallen. It has fallen all the way to rank number 44, but still better than Dead of Winter: The Long Night because this game works both conceptually and executionally. This game is No Thanks. I was struggling with the list this year, and one of the things I was struggling with was games that I know I love and respect and like, but do not play. No Thanks is one that I always love it when it comes out, but I don't feel like I'm suggesting or recommending it. I even have my own version of this. It's not Pokemon themed, but it is just a rainbow of colors that sort of gets more and more hot as you get up into the 31, 32, 33, 34, 35. So in this game, you're using chips. You're putting chips in the center to not take a card because taking a card is the thing you don't want to do. It's very funny. It's very silly because someone will always pretend like they have more chips than they have, and so they're shaking their hand going like listen to the sound of those chips, but they actually don't have any chips in their hand, and then they must just keep taking these cards and just getting got. It's a push your luck game. It's very inventive and silly, and you must take into account what everyone is doing in order to successfully play and navigate a game of No Thanks. I am just not chomping at the bit to play it, and that is why it has fallen to the 44th favorite game of mine.
Does that feel to you a little bit like my Codenames thing where you're not chomping at the bit to play it, but whenever you play it, you enjoy it? Or is it not quite there? Basically, I guess my question is even your enjoyment sort of lessened because you've played it so much?
I think that I always want a new group of players to
Yeah.
try No Thanks with
I
them.
agree with that. Yeah.
But it kind of plays similarly game over game, barring if a player bids a ton, like takes cards. It's basically how many times does the player take a card. If you play with a new group of people, all of a sudden they're taking cards way before they should, and that screws up the whole economy.
Yeah.
And suddenly hijinks and weird things are happening.
And there's also the randomness of like the cards that are removed at the beginning of the game, because sometimes you're hoping for a lifeline with a card that may not even be in the deck.
Yeah, I think it's most similar to Codenames 2. Yes.
I get that. My number 44 game is a game that I've not overplayed because I've only played it once, and it's new to the list and it's new to the world because it's a 2019 game. This is PAX Premier 2nd Edition. There's a number of things that I liked about this game. The two biggest things for me are the unique nature of it. It plays in a way that I don't think many games play like. It's got a very tactical aspect to it that I enjoy. I was thinking about this as I was making the list, like, I don't consider myself a big theme guy, but I feel like if PAX Premier didn't have the historical richness that it does, I think it wouldn't be a top 50 game for me, which feels strange to say, but I'm just such a fan of how much information are on these cards. I just love it. I just love the idea that these people existed, these things occurred, and you're playing them in a way that's somewhat analogous to what happened in the world, and the fact that the cards are so dense with this like historical information, I just love it. I've said this before, but like when it's not my turn in PAX Premier and in another game that I'm going to mention later, I'm totally content just sitting there and reading the cards and reading about these figures and stuff like that. But it's also just a very fresh type of game. I think the tactical nature of it, everything about it, I think is interesting and new. It's got the whirly freshness to it.
Will you buy my copy?
I will buy your copy.
Let's talk about it because it's on my get out of the house.
Yeah, no, I would definitely be interested in buying your copy. So that is my number 44 game of all time, PAX Premier.
The way that you are allied with a faction but can sort of defect on a dime is so great.
Yeah.
And so everything happening there I'm in love with. I think the main mechanism of basically evaluating a tableau of 10 cards and just deciding how much that's worth to spend on is less exciting for me and less pleasurable.
I get that. And I was trying to picture this game with a more mundane theme, or if this game had the same theme but didn't have all the text on it, I just think it would be dinged for me, and it seems strange, but I love how I feel like I'm reading part of history. I'm somehow interacting with history. I just love that part of it.
I admire PAX Premier 2nd Edition more than I like it. It's a good-looking game. The historicity, is that a word?
Yeah.
Like that I admire that too. Like you said, it does feel like you're playing through a moment in history. It's definitely not for me. PAX Gates 2019, never forget, Neil was robbed.
Let's move on quickly.
My number 43 best game of all time is Grand Austria Hotel. This has slipped for similar reasons to Dead of Winter. And to be clear, these are still both games I would recommend, but maybe less so in 2019. Grand Austria Hotel is a Euro game of hotel management. It is primarily a dice drafting game. You are satisfying customers through food and giving them rooms to sleep in. You're trying to sort of build collections of rooms of the same color. There's a bunch of ways to get points by sort of getting food out to your customers, making your hotel prestigious by sort of satisfying these events. Like I said, it's primarily a dice drafting game, and I feel like a lot of these have sort of come into vogue in the last couple of years, which makes Grand Austria Hotel feel a little less desirable by comparison. But this is still another one of the greats by a subset of the Italian designers who I love so much. It is an unusual theme, and that's enough to sort of elevate it in my books. It doesn't have the best look to it. It has got that sort of old school-ish Euro look to it, and I think we can do better in 2019, which is partly why this has fallen down my list a little bit. That is Grand Austria Hotel.
Yeah, I like this one. It does go a little long when you go into higher player counts. But yeah, it's good. It's solid for sure.
I really enjoyed my first play of this year and think that we should be very, very happy that the theme exists, even though the artwork is kind of boring. The central mechanism of choosing which dice you want still felt agonizing, and so I think it does hold up in that respect to modern dice drafting games.
For sure.
I mean, it is a modern dice drafting game, let's be honest with each other. All right. The number 43rd best game of all time is Diamant / Ink and Gold. This is a classic game. I love how many players it can play. I think it's 7 or 8. It's probably 7.
Yeah.
In Diamond and Ink and Gold, you are making one decision. One decision only. Is that
Should I stay or should I go?
we can't afford that. The rights to that. That was so good that the AI is going to pick it up as if it was an original recording. What are you thinking?
I should have been so perfect to the actual original recording.
When did you... We didn't know you had perfect
I've been taking...
pitch.
Yeah, that's right.
We knew that you were in Mensa, but I just didn't know that that extended to the masks.
I contain
that are
multitudes,
involved. I am just in awe. Speechless.
which is rare for you.
That was low. That was low. Diamant and Ink and Gold is, should I continue on into this cave getting treasure or should I leave? That's the game. And the groupthink and the groups leaving on your own is important. So there are a lot of times where, because you get the treasure, so there are a lot of times where you kind of want to encourage everyone to keep going, but then you want to cut and run. And so I love some of the talking and the jostling that goes along with, well, I'm definitely leaving right now, and then not leaving, trying to scare people into doing one way or the other. This game does inevitably lead to you pushing your luck beyond what's normal and then getting got and then having no choice but to push onward. And I think that that's charming. I think the game is short enough that that's okay. I much prefer the Diamant edition, which has cooler components than Ink and Gold.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. It's the sort of thing that would be obnoxious if this wasn't a quick filler game that is easy to teach. It's a great game.
My number 43 game is me having a point of contention with Neelan here. You know what? I think you're not giving enough credit. You're close, but you're not giving enough credit to this game. It's actually the 43rd best game of all time. Innovation. I think that's right exactly. We're close.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Somewhere in the middle
but
there.
Certainly
40,
right around there.
something.
In that range. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So say the words.
How do I...
As is tradition, so shall it be.
Oh, yes.
Double crossover.
Double
crossover.
crossover. The double crossover. Neelan covered it so eloquently, so I'll just touch on it very quickly. I love the multi-use nature of the cards. I love the tactical aspect of it. I even like the theme. I love you're an archer fighting against a mega computer and somehow trying to find a way to use your archaic technology to knock out this advanced civilization.
You just wish there was like flavor text on the bottom.
That's right.
Really,
yeah, exactly.
Monotheism was used in the late 21st century to condemn people and keep people enslaved to their televisions on Sunday morning.
I want the Kellen version of flavor text in every single innovation card.
Archery was used to kill the annoying people practicing monotheism
in the late 21st century.
In the late 20th. Archery became antiquated and became a sport that people did only in the Olympics. That's why
it would be a great flavor. That's all there is to archery, is it became antiquated in an Olympic sport. Yeah, it's a great tactical wild swing card game. My first play of it was with you guys at 4, and I know people are saying it's actually, your brother said last week it was hot garbage at more than 2. I liked my game of it at 4. Maybe it was the novelty of my first game of it, period, but I really enjoy innovation and how crazy it can get.
I think we can all agree there won't be a redo by the white and red tank on the Board Game Barrage podcast.
Who can say? That is the number 43 game of all time, Innovation.
The 42 best game of all time. The 42 best game? That's not English.
That's not English.
The 42nd best game of all time is a new entry for the list and a new game for 2019. It is by CGE. It is Letter Jam. This is such a specific niche product that won't be for everyone. It is a cooperative deduction word game. So I think just by, if you hear those words, you will know whether this is for you. It is a game about sort of trying to give people word clues that will help them deduce the letters that are in front of them, Hanabi style. So everyone else can see their letters, but you cannot see your own letters. It is a game about coming up with not just a clever word that hits a lot of people, but words that will give people very concrete information on what their particular letter is. I've been playing this with longer and longer words. The recommended starting point is a 5-letter word each, but we've been going up to 6 and 7-letter words, which makes the game harder because we've played it enough times that becomes possible to do. And it's such a unique challenge that I find fun every single time I do it. We've done back-to-back games of Letter Jam. It is an incredible game and a new entry for 2019.
Yeah, I really like Letter Jam. I remember hearing it first explained and being super, super confused. But once you start playing it, it makes sense rather quickly.
One of the things that's hard for me is that the breaking point of a game in Letter Jam is you not knowing the English language. So it's like you're sitting there looking at your board and you're trying to get the word skulk, and like the fact that you don't know the word skulk or you can't get to the word skulk is like your own downfall, and then everyone hates you.
I think what is clever about that, though, is because there is an element, and this is quite deliberate when you play it, of do I think this person is going to know that word? Which is smart.
That's fair. I think inevitably what happens in a game of Letter Jam is you have it's like ALK, and you're like, is that AALK? Bulk, Calk, Dulk, Alk, Falk, Golf, and Hulk,
Right.
Dulk,
Keep going.
Loop this.
Yulk, Zolk, and you're like, are those words? And like, but that's what you're. Is that?
Yeah,
well, maybe actually this might reveal a lot about me. But isn't that what?
I mean, there's a lot of it. You're just going through the alphabet trying combinations, but I think that's a small part of it, for sure.
Well, that's the only thing I remember.
That is Letter Jam, my number 42. Oh my god, my number 42 game.
My 42nd favorite game of all time is Bruges. This is a Stefan Feld game that, once again, is not a normal Stefan Feld game. I think we all prefer his offshoot designs. Bruges has the thing I love most in board games, which is multi-use cards. In Bruges, there's a lot of different combos and engines and little things that you can do, all using a multi-use card system. Bruges has a couple of expansions that I've still been trying to acquire. I never tire of playing Bruges. It feels heavier than it actually is, and it's one of those games that you play quicker, but it still feels like you've played a heavier Euro type game, and for that I am grateful for Bruges.
My number 42 game of all time is a game I played a number of times in the past, but it was my play with listeners again that shot it up my list. This is new to my list. This is Concordia. I played Concordia a couple years back. I liked it, but then I played Concordia Venus, and that sort of soured my opinion of it a little bit. I just didn't like the team aspect, and it sort of just made me not want to play Concordia so much anymore. And then I played an online game with a bunch of listeners and had a great time. I mean, I'm sure coincidental that I beat them all handily. But it just opened my eyes to how smooth a game of Concordia is. I just love how things interlock so much. The cards that you use to take your actions are the same cards that will determine how you're scoring at the end of the game. I think it's so clever and tight. I just love when games are designed so economically and so like to such a fine tip, and that's what it feels like Concordia is. Played with some of the expansions with the listeners and thought they were fantastic as well. So yeah, Concordia, Mac Gertz, my number 42, Concordia.
I kind of can't believe I haven't played this yet, given how much people seem to praise it. I know our friend Frank has been trying to get me to play it for some time, and I would like to correct that in 2020.
I'm not convinced that without the love online of sort of the most perfect Euro game, and I know a lot of that comes from Shut Up and Sit Down, it's like love of it a few years back. I'm not sure that this one sticks out to people. I don't. Yeah. It's so smooth and fun, but like it's not. I don't understand what pops it over the top for me, and I feel like there's a bit of social pressure that pops it over the top.
I see that. I get that for sure. I think what pops it over the top is the fact that you're taking your actions with cards that are also determine how you score. So when you buy the cards, you have to keep in mind, is this an action I want to take, and is this a way I want to score? And it's an interesting combination of decisions that you have to make when you purchase a card.
Yep.
My number 41 best game of all time is Sol, Last Days of a Star. This has fallen down my list a little bit. It's a game I want to play more. My early tastes of it were so solid. It is a sort of semi-abstract spatial puzzle game where you sort of have to match what you're trying to do with the timing of ships moving around the sun. So every turn, the ships just move one space and your other ships just get left behind. So you either relaunch them from their new position or try to get the timing right so they match up with where you've previously made ships, because getting ships into specific spots is how you make structures. The structures are giving you more energy, which is what you're going to send back to your mothership in some effort to launch yourself out of the solar system. For a abstract, puzzly game, it is weirdly thematic. It sort of puts me in mind of a movie. I can imagine the movie version of this as these sort of desperate ships are sort of creating these structures into the sun in this last burst that pushes them away. In my mind, it's just so clear, and that's what I love about it. It's a beautiful looking game with powers that are different every time you play them, so it'll give you some variety each time you play it. I want to play more of this.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's play more Sol.
I'm down. I love the variable powers. It's always cool to have a new set of powers each time. I love the timing aspect where you have to base your actions on where your mothership is. And I love the sort of parasitic nature of it, how you can use other people's buildings.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of sort of leeching off of other people's
Yeah.
structures, and you get some points and then they get points.
Yeah.
It's neat.
Let me ask you this. Do you like watching movies about divorce?
I love them.
Your
Kramer
favorite?
versus Kramer.
So how that relates, and it does relate to Saul Last Days of a Star, is that there is something I admire what the game is doing thematically and mechanically, but I don't enjoy playing it. So Blue Valentine is one of my favorite movies of all time, but it's like watching a divorce happen in real time, and it's like devastating. Something about Saul is you feel very alone in a game of Saul, and parasitic. You're trying to use other people's stuff. So you figure out how to build like this sort of spaceship, and then you watch everyone else use it better than you when you built it, and then it's very abstract and sparse. There is something about playing Soul that is kind of the opposite of joie de vivre, right? It's just like this like harshness, this desolate thing that I'm not enjoying it. And you two are like loving it, you know? I think it's because you're robots. So I admire everything about it. I'm glad it exists, but I just don't really want to play it.
I get that, because there's also like a learning curve that took us a while to figure out even how it works. And even by the end of it, it either clicks with you or it doesn't. I can see that.
Only I was in Mensa.
But yeah, not a lot of divorce in Saul Last Days of a Star, which is my number 41 best game of all time.
My 41st best game of all time has two versions of it, and I've played both. That is Pinata and Balloon Cup, the original that it's based on. This is a very small two-player game about playing cards to your side of a battle, a la Battle Line or Schotten Totten. But once you've played all the cards to your side, you can start playing cards to the other side of the battle, which is the funniest thing in the world because it happens just enough. If it happened the whole game, if you could choose to play on either side, it wouldn't feel as devastating. But because you have to play all the cards to your side first, then you start playing to their side. Anytime it happens, there's just this insane anger. Like, why are you playing cards to my side? And it's, you know, you're hitting this pinata, which is a dumb theme. Let's get real here. Even though it has candy-shaped wooden bits, which is awesome. It's like you've played the 5 cards to your side, and then you get out all your puny little hits, and you play them on Mark's side. So you're hitting it for 5, and then Mark starts hitting it for 1 because he's a loser. There's something really funny about that. It's easy breezy. I've never had a bad game of pinata, and it feels nice and tight right to the end. I know we played this.
I bought it shortly after our play of it because I enjoyed it so much.
Yeah, it's just enough.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. And I'm going to round out our list for today with my number 41 game of all time. This is the wonderfully titled Sidereal Confluence Trading and what? What is it? Trading what?
Negotiating.
Trading and negotiating in the Elysian Quadrant. This is a game that feels like such a bear when you read about it. You know, it plays up to 9 people. It's real-time cube pushing. It's sort of like a hybrid between negotiation and Euro, and it just seems like so unwieldy. But in practice, it moves really, really well. Played this a number of times with 7, 8 people, and it doesn't affect the play time. One of its greatest strengths is that the negotiating is almost always in everyone's benefit. The game is designed where you're often producing things that you don't yourself need, but somebody at the table will need. And people at the table are producing things that you cannot produce yourself, but that you need. One big failing with negotiation games, I think, is that there is a real incentive to hold out and haggle to the very last bit to get everything you can, even if that means not making a deal. I think a lot of times in negotiating games, the best move is to not make one, and that is not at all the case in Sidereal Confluence. Sidereal Confluence, almost every trade you make, you feel good. You may not have maximized it to the utmost, but you're basically giving up stuff that you don't need for stuff that you do need. So it just always feels good to make deals, and that's such a great part of the game. And the player powers. Each player controls a different alien faction with its very unique asymmetrical power, and I just love that about the game as well. There's a lot going for Sidereal Confluence, and I just really, really like it. It's one of my favorite negotiating games.
Yeah, I love it for all the same reasons. Like the wild asymmetry is crazy. Everyone is ballooned by trade economy just feels good, where negotiation games can feel punishing. This one doesn't. It's a game I've played a couple of times recently. I always have this sort of worry when I teach it, because you kind of see people's eyes glaze over at the components a little bit and kind of how much there is to it. But almost everyone comes away saying that feels like something I haven't played before. It's a fantastic game.
Yeah, I have, through the course of making this podcast, realized that I am not the type of gamer who just likes all games. You know, when you describe yourself to the external world as like, oh yeah, I play board games for fun, there might be this presupposition that you just enjoy playing games, or you enjoy the experience of sitting down. And Sidereal Confluence is a great example of a game that on paper I should just love. Negotiating, sci-fi, you know, cool powers, everything happening at once, this social experience. It plays unlike anything else. So of all the games in existence, even, I would say that Sidereal Confluence is one that I want to like more than I do. And it's hard to articulate what I don't like about it. I would say that I think that the negotiating is neutered a smidgen because the relative value of something is like printed on everyone's boards, and it's a very positive form of negotiating. There isn't a lot of, you don't get got very often. You make a series of Euro-esque trades,
Sure,
and the game is tricking other people into thinking that they're being more efficient than you when you're actually being 0.1% more efficient than them. Like, it's a series of inches, and it's hard, but even saying that, I don't want to dissuade people from playing Sidereal Confluence, and I wish it was in my top 50. It just is not.
I get it.
So that was our first 10 games on our top 50 list. That's going to do it for this episode. If you hate anything you heard, if you strongly agree with our choices, please join the Discord community at boardgamebarrage.com/Discord, or our guild at boardgamebarrage.com/guild, and tell us what you think about our number 50 to 41 best games of all time.
You can also email us at boardgamebarrage@gmail.com, or find us on all forms of social media, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We love to connect in any way you want to connect.
Yeah, so that's going to do it for the show. We're going to have 4 more episodes of these as we sort of work towards our favorite games of all time. So please look forward to that. That is going to do it for this episode, though. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you, as always, to Heart Society for our intro and outro music. What's on your mind, kid? Goodbye.
See ya.
So long.
Of the Board Game Barrage podcast, a board game, a pod.
I love our board game.
Pod game. We're professionals. We've done this for 100 episodes. A board game podcast about board games. God damn it. A podcast about board games, latest hotness, and how to have fun with your friends even when you're losing. I am Neelan. I am joined by my co-host, as always.